Welcome back to Bibliophiles, a show from the Ann Arbor District Library in Michigan that's all about books. Each episode, we take a few minutes to answer a single book-related question. I'm here with Lucy and Amanda and our guest Jacob, and I'm Christopher. This time we're talking all about a book that was given to us as a gift. Lucy, what did you pick?
So what I picked, it was actually, to be honest, given to my son as a gift, but this was like 18 years ago and he was very little and he couldn't read. So it really was a gift for me because I was the one who was reading it to him. And it is a book by William Steig, who wrote a lot of children's books, Shrek and Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. This one is called Amos and Boris. And there's a couple of reasons why this book was such a great gift. First of all, like Sylvester and the Magic Pebble, another one of his books, is one of my favorite childhood books. I had never heard of this book. So I think to receive something from an author that you know you love, but you're not aware of is a really great gift. And then it's this story of Amos and Boris. Amos is a tiny mouse who decides he wants to go out and explore the ocean, and he builds a ship. And he falls off his ship at one point because he's having this like existential moment where he's contemplating the stars and the vastness of the universe. And that's one of the things I love about this book, is that it's a kid's book, but it has all these like really kind of big concepts in it, but they're introduced in a way where it rolls really well and really beautifully with the story. So he falls off his ship and he's rescued by this whale named Boris. And they become the closest possible friends. They share everything about their lives, their ambitions. Boris is going to take him back to land. And so they have this journey together and they have to part at the end of their journey. But Amos the mouse says, if you ever need saving, I'll be here for you. And sure enough, there's another time where the whale needs saving and Amos saves him. So they're reunited. But it's kind of this book where like beauty and dread coexist at the same time. The language is beautiful. You know, he talks about this phosphorescent sea and whales spouting luminous water. And so to read it, the reason why this was such a great gift is that I read this constantly to my son. He just loved it, even from a very young age. It's pretty long, but I think because I loved reading it so much, it was so beautiful. It's hard to get through the end without like wiping a tear from your eye, even if you read it every night. So that when someone's reading to you like that, I think that that's also a gift, you know. So it was a book that was given to him. I sort of took it over and I read it constantly, but it's something that we shared. So it's just a beautiful, lesser known book by William Steig, Amos and Boris. It's got some really deep stuff. It's sort of a story about what it's like to be alive, but it's also a story about unusual friendship. So that is the best book that I received as a gift. So Jacob, what do you have for us?
Yes. So the book that first came to mind when we're kind of thinking about best book I was ever given as a gift, just this past Christmas, my mother gifted me, it's called She's Come Undone by Wally Lamb. Now, this is like it's not my cup of tea. Usually I'm reading books that are, a little bit of magical, maybe a little bit spooky. This is very much like a birth to midlife. You go through the whole journey, and it's a brick of a book, right? Which also kind of scares me. A lot about this book scared me. And then I read it and I was like, wait, this is a life event. At any rate, so She's Come Undone by Wally Lamb. It's about Dolores Price. And Dolores Price is fat, which is being somebody of a certain size. I don't read very many books about people being fat. So that was one connection where I was like, oh man, this book is so good. Anyways, Dolores Price, it's about her life, her relationships with her mother, her grandmother. It's about her going to college. It's about her seeking mental health help. It's about falling in love. It's about making friends. I don't even know how to summarize this book. And it made me think maybe I shouldn't talk about this book because I can't sit here and summarize it for you. I really can't. What I do know is that at the end of this book, I didn't feel as though I had finished a book. I felt like I had made a friend. And since I've read this book, maybe once a week, I think to myself, I wonder what Dolores is doing. I wonder how Dolores is. What would Dolores do in this situation? In the gift part of it, I was talking to my mom about books, right? And it had come, she found out I had never read this book before. And it was very much like, I'm getting it in your hands today kind of thing. And then I found out that both of my sisters have read this book and loved this book. And then I read this book and I sent it to my two best friends, and then they read the book. So it's been like this web of like gift giving, but also like we have a mutual friend. It's one of those books, the last 100 pages, I don't think I was even physically present. I was in the book and I was just turning pages, drinking coffee, doing a little bit of this action. And it's just one of the most magical books I've ever read in my life. It is very heavy. So if you're not in the mood to get like wrecked, don't read it. Wait until you're in the mood to get a little bit the rug pulled up from under you. But that is my selection.
That's awesome. I like that that so many people in your circle have gifted it to each other. Like somebody loved it that much where it's just like, you have to read this, you have to read this, you have to read this. So that's one of the magical things about finding because a book is a personal choice, especially if it's a brick of a book, like Wally Lamb's titles. Like it's got to be something special. And that's a great nod for the book. I've wanted to read a book by him, but again, all of his books are huge. And I had watched the show, I Know This Much Is True. And I was like, oh, I should read that book and read some of the other Wally Lamb books. And then pandemic, 700 other books fell in my lap. But so I'm so glad you brought that book to the table today, Jacob.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to be able to share it.
Yeah.
I think that was one of, it's also like another level that book is a gift. It was one of Oprah's first picks, like before she started doing it. And so Wally Lamb came out of like obscurity and was able to send children to college and like actually exist as a writer because he was recognized at that level for how good his book was. So it's just interesting that like he was given a gift by somebody because he was recognized for that book. So.
And the funny thing is, when I cracked open this big old book, there was like a introduction, right? And I'm reading it. I'm a little bit wary. This book's heavy in so many different ways. And the author's talking about how Oprah called him in the middle of the night and said, I haven't been able to sleep in 3 days. I've been thinking about your book. And I was like, if Oprah says it, then I'm diving in. And what bigger compliment can an author want than getting a personal phone call from Oprah Winfrey? So yeah.
That's awesome.
I loved it.
Oh. Well, I also have a totally different kind of book. I have a picture book and it's not heavy at all. But have you ever had those, my coworkers here and people out there in the universe, have you ever had that moment where you randomly find a book like on the shelf in a bookstore or in the library and you pick it up and you look at it and you instantly fall in love with it and need to like shout about it and do cartwheels? Well, picture books are very easy to do that with because you can find it on the shelf and then instantly read it and have this reaction and the celebration all within like a span of like 10 to 15 minutes. Well, that's what happened with this book. This book, it's a picture book. It is Miss Moon, Wise Words from a Dog Governess by Janet Hill. It came out in 2016. I was working the desk in the children's department and I grabbed this book off. I love dogs. And I thought, oh, that looks pretty. So I picked it up. I read it. I was doing cartwheels. I ran to everybody in the room. All my coworkers. I was like, this book. Because number one, I love the illustrations. They're all oil on canvas. And it is about dogs. So this book, Miss Moon, is a dog governess to 67 dogs on an island off the coast of France. And this book is not a story. It has one page where it tells you how she became a dog governess. And the rest of the book are the lessons that she learned as a dog governess. And the whole book is full of her beautiful illustrations. So this is basically the only part of the story. It's very short. And there she is. Oh, I just love her so much. And then as you go through, there are these lessons. Lesson 1, friends can come in many shapes and sizes. So it has this tiny lesson and then an illustration to match the lesson. Here's another one, lesson 2, be true to your adventurous spirit. and then there's a little hot air balloon. So the whole book has these lessons. There's 20 of them in here. So, and you think of this kind of a book, it's good for gift giving because it's not a story. It kind of has that, not self-help, but little lesson-y things. And this is a kind of book I feel like is a good gift because of those little features that might be, because it's not a novel and it's a little more safety involved. If you're giving a book that's just like 20 lessons you can read really quickly. So I found the book on the shelf, jumped up and down, I loved it. And then I discovered that the woman sells her work. She sells prints of her illustrations. She had an Etsy shop. I just went nuts. I bought one of her prints. I bought one that's a bicycle with her and then a bunch of dogs like riding this like bicycle. It's adorable. She also has another book in a similar vein called Miss Mink. Yes, I wrote it down, Miss Mink. And it's a similar kind of thing, 20 lessons about her adventures with taking care of cats. So just lovely. Miss Moon, the dog governess. So I freaked out about it on the desk, instantly loved it. And then a few months later, it was my birthday and somebody who witnessed my falling in love with this purchased it for me. And it just gave it that extra nod of like, I'm like, oh yeah, I can put it on my shelf and stare at it because it's just so pretty and it's just so smooth. And I love, love, love all the illustrations. So there we are, Miss Moon, and I'll stop now. But that is my pick for this week. Christopher, what do you got for us?
Well, I got this book from my brother, who I'm very close with, and it's David Lynch, Room to Dream. I think I alluded to this on another show. And this is the most David Lynch thing ever. It's both a biography and an autobiography. He worked with Christina McKenna, and Christina McKenna does all the work doing the historical research and talking to everyone in his personal life. And then David Lynch writes a response chapter to that. So it is done in chronological order. First, there's the Christina McKenna chapter, then a David Lynch chapter, then another Christina McKenna chapter. It's fascinating. And you really get this other insight into David Lynch. You know, everyone says how friendly he is and how nice he is. And I think it really comes through in his book. We don't often read quotes from books, but I am compelled to read one small quote. I have this thing where I want to drill holes through floors and pour oil in the floors and have it be dark around the hole. I love plumbing, and then I could do plumbing of copper pipes coming out, but not shiny new copper, it would be old copper. Then I'd have different kinds of sinks and plumbing and faucets. I don't have a clue why this appeals to me. It's so wonderful. And of course, David Lynch talks about what it was like to make all of his movies and everything else. So you really get this behind the scenes take, both from the biographer's perspective and from his perspective as well. And because it was a gift from my brother who knows me so well, this is really a treasured book for me. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed it. So we have coming up next a discussion of Concrete Rose. And if you'd like to tell us what one of your favorite books that was gifted to you is, we'd love to hear it. I also want to give a special thanks to Jacob for coming on the show this time. So
well, thank you for having me.
You bet. Take care.